Hey everyone, it's Ro with Ro's Wigglers here making another video. I thought I'd share a little bit of some of what I am feeding my worms lately. I like to experiment a little bit, but I have over the years figured out what the worms really like and different reasons for why I feed different things. So I wanted to show you all the stuff I've got set up for over the next few weeks to help really feed them. Now, if you are a home vermicomposter and you just have a little worm bin, you probably just, save up your fruit and veggie scraps and that's enough to feed your worms. However, I have a lot of worms at this point, so it's important for me to be mindful of coming up with materials to feed them, if that makes sense. So, the first item on the list of what our worms are going to eat today is pumpkin. This is pumpkin. I got a whole bunch of pumpkins that I collected from, Halloween, people who had made jack-o'-lanterns and stuff. And I went ahead and cut this all up into decent sized chunks. And I've learned the hard way to put them in a tray of some sort so I can put them in a single layer before I throw them into the freezer. That way they don't all get stuck together. So there's my pro tip for you. Put them in a single layer, freeze them. The freezing and thawing process for really any food scraps is helpful because it bursts the cell walls, which means it kind of turns everything into mush and causes it to break down more quickly and be more easily consumed by your worms. It also kills off any larvae and prevents sort of any fruit flies and things that you really don't want, especially if you're keeping in an indoor worm bin. So, pumpkin, a worm favorite. Then I have several bags here of, this is what I have going on all the time. This is different kinds of fruit and veggie scraps that came out of my freezer. So what we do at our house is when we do any kind of food prep or anything, I always have these Ziploc bags in the freezer and we throw our scraps in here. Like this one has some coffee grounds, some tea leaves, some pieces of kale. Here's a strawberry, some celery, I think. And doing this is really great. This one has a bunch of grapes, some sweet potato peels, some broccoli, some more strawberries, a little bit of coffee grounds in there. Usually my coffee grounds are separate because I do that in a separate space, but those things are all in there. And what I like about this, and a combination of all of these things, is it gives you the opportunity to either switch up what you're feeding or feed different types of material at the same time. Feeding what Anne over at Plant Obsessed calls fast and slow foods. So if you feed some things that are really quick to break down and the worms can digest quickly, and then you have your slow foods that take a little bit longer, that is really great because it can space out your feedings without overwhelming your worms. Then, again, another round, coffee grounds with the filters. These will not go into my breeder bins. These will go into my big grow out bins, which, nope, you can't see them from here. I've got some big stock tanks in the back over here that I put all of my baby worms and cocoons in whenever I do sifting and things so that they can mature and then eventually make their way into my breeder bins and eventually make their way to you potentially. But these are the coffee grounds. They eat the filters too, so that's fine. And then this looks really gross to us, which means the worms loved it. So I actually blended up in a blender that is not our kitchen blender because my partner does not like that. This is pumpkin. This is the part of the pumpkin also that had all of the seeds and everything. And so part of my new strategy is I blend up the pumpkin seeds. That way they don't hang out in the worm bin forever. And it actually provides some extra grit to help the worms digest the food, which is great. So anyway, in here, pumpkin, coffee grounds, and eggshell all blended up together so I can give them this in one quick feeding. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually freeze this just to really make sure that I don't end up with fruit flies. That's a big thing for me. And then what I'll do is I'll take it out and I'll let it thaw again. And whenever I'm going through a big round of feeding all my bins at one time, I learned this from Captain Nat. Check out his YouTube channel too. Him and Ann at Plant Obsessed are two of my favorite YouTube channels that I follow and have learned a ton from. But basically, take scissors, snip this end off, and you can kind of pour down the middle of your worm bin a little line, and that's perfect for feeding your worms. So they are going to be very, very, very excited about this and all over it, and it will disappear within just a couple days, which means more worm castings more quickly. And the last thing I'll show you, just because I have it, and why not, is sort of what I feed my worms, but more what I give my worms to help aid in their digestion. And that is eggshells. I have a ton of eggshells here that I've collected from a local restaurant, and they're going to be, I'm going to blend them up into a fine powder in this little food processor that I got for Christmas. Yay! I love toys to help me feed my worms, and my partner loves it whenever I don't use our kitchen implements to feed my worms. Some of you worm farmers out there might know a little bit about that. Say something in the comments if you do. But yeah, eggshells. I'll blend these up into a fine powder, and they actually provide grit, which helps the worms digest the food. Basically, worms have a little gizzard, kind of like a chicken, and so they don't have teeth. And what they use instead is grit, like things like ground up eggshells or sand or azomite. There's a few different things you can add for grit, but this will really help your worms be able to process and break down your food. Anyway, that's what my worms are eating right now. That'll change as we get into the gardening and growing season. Then I'll have all different kinds of other sorts of food scraps, a lot of lettuces, a lot of things from, I harvest, and then I have the parts that we don't eat, or if I pull a bunch of weeds, I can feed those to the worms. And of course, they love compost, so they'll be getting a fair share of compost as well, more so as a bedding, but they eat it and give us even better compost, which we all know as worm castings. Anyway, until next time, I hope to see you again. Hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, and like, and tell your friends about me because I'm trying to get the word out there. Thanks.